If you communicate the same, you continue to be the same. And if your phrases have dominated you till now, then for the subsequent 30 days you have to rule them. This is no longer a motivational challenge. This is a vow, a sacred settlement between your greater self and the man you have been usually supposed to become. 30 days of silence, now not as absence, however as non-secular discipline. If you take delivery of this, you will stroll through a fireplace that burns away the ancient voice, the vulnerable voice, the distracted voice, the emotional voice, and in its place, you will forge authority, command, clarity, and purpose. Say nothing until it builds, and watch what rises from within. You have spoken enough. That is the truth. You have explained, you have declared, you have promised, and deliver it aloud. And what has come of it? Have your phrases constructed the lifestyles you declare to desire? Have your explanations moved mountains? Or have they end up the noise that buries your identification below distraction and emotion? Let me say it plainly. Most guys talk extra than they act. They use their phrases no longer as tools of construction, however as shields for weakness. They talk from habit, from nervousness, from impulse. They react as an alternative of observe, and they provide an explanation for alternatively of move. They confess feelings alternatively of directing them. And each and every time they open their mouth besides readability or conviction, they weaken the very basis they are trying to build. Speech is no longer harmless. It is creative, formative. It is instructional. And if your speech is undisciplined, then your existence will reflect that chaos. Your unconscious thought listens to everything you say and it believes you. Not once, no longer when you suggest it, however each and every time. Repetition is law. Emotion is fuel. If you proceed to talk except vision, except accuracy, except restraint, you will in no way command your internal world, and you will by no means construct the outer one. This is why we start with silence. I do now not provide you a challenge. I provide you a vow, a sacred settlement between your greater self and the section of you that has remained enslaved to talk. For 30 days you will be silent, now not as a retreat, but as a preparation, no longer as absence, however as the weathering of interior power. You will now not suppress your spirit, you will listen it. You will end speaking to be understood. You will end leaking emotion via language. You will quit polluting your path with idle comments, speedy replies, apprehensive laughter, or scattered thoughts. You will, for the first time in years, preserve the line within. Silence is no longer passivity. It is preparation. It is the gathering of furnace earlier than the strike of the hammer. It is the storing of command before the sentence is issued. It is the intellectual quickly that precedes non-secular clarity. You will examine a religious regulation in this silence. Speech besides motive is permission for weak point to remain. You have approved too much. You have tolerated your personal emotional leakage. You have allowed opinions to break out besides fact. Frustration to turn out to be language, confusion to grow to be noise. But no more. From this day forward, you communicate solely what you have earned the proper to say. Speech have to be born of thought, clarity, and vision. No more guessing aloud. No greater half-finished theories. No greater commentary. You will communicate solely what is tested, what is refined, what is ready. Until then, you will say nothing. Think now of John D. Rockefeller. He was once no longer a loud man. He's once now not theatrical. In conferences, he spoke so little that others grew nervous. They crammed the silence with opinions, with predictions, with chatter. But Rockefeller sat still, listening, calculating. His silence was once now not emptiness. It used to be dominance. His restraint was once no longer weakness. It was once the evidence of inner certainty. And when he sooner or later spoke, his phrases have been no longer debated. They have been followed. That is power. And it is now your path. For 30 days, you will communicate solely when actually necessary. You will get rid of pointless talking. You will abstain from opinions. You will now not give an explanation for yourself. You will now not react with words. You will let others talk. You will let the world chatter, but you will be still. Let this be the new regulation over your mouth. No pointless talking, no opinions, no emotional leaks, no casual 145-6 explanations. Every phrase will be weighed, or it will now not be spoken. This vow is no longer for the faint of heart. It is no longer for the man who nevertheless finds alleviation in expressing weakness. It is for the man who is prepared to construct himself from within. It is for the man who is worn out of leaking power and equipped to pay attention. It is for the man who no longer desires to be heard due to the fact he is turning into anyone the world can't ignore. Let your silence end up your structure. And now you will talk your first and solely sentence today. For 30 days I keep my words. I protect my power. I pick out silence over exposure. Say it aloud. Say it with posture. Say it with clarity. Say it again. And say nothing else due to the fact the vow has begun. The phrases you communicate have now not purely described your condition. They have created it. You do no longer talk about weakness. You teach it. You do now not speak about delay. You application it. Every time you've got said, I can't, it's hard. I'll try. You carved a deeper groove into the equipment of your mind. That groove became identity. And that identification has emerged as your ceiling. You have no longer been stopped through fate by means of background or by means of competition. You have been stopped to your very own language by means of repetition, by using volume, through idle phrases thrown carelessly into the wind, each one a small settlement with limitation. You have been giving orders to your personal unconscious, and in its loyalty it has obeyed now not once, no longer occasionally, however each time. This is why the 30-day vow of silence is now not simply a pause in expression. It is a wreck in the programming. It is a reinstallation of greater thought. It is a purging of the default phrases you have allowed to rule your identity. It is the stripping away of the vocabulary of weak point and the quiet start of authority. You have stated matters aloud that have to have in no way handed your lips. Words like, I'm now not precise at that. Things in no way work for me. I constantly mess it up. That's simply the way I am. You concept they had been harmless. You have been wrong. You notion they have been honest. But they have been dishonest to the man you are successful of becoming. And each and every time they escaped your mouth, your unconscious recorded them as law. Understand this. Words are no longer reflections. They are blueprints. You are now not describing reality. You are defining it. Even your internal dialogue, if left unchecked, will become a chain round your progress. You do no longer have to consider the phrases for them to be dangerous. You solely have to repeat them. This is the silent poison of language. And the vow is the antidote. Let me exhibit you how effective silence can be when aligned with execution. Henry Ford was once misunderstood most of his life. He was once now not recognized for eloquence. He used to be now not celebrated for his speech. In fact, he was once frequently mocked for it. Men assumed his silence supposed simplicity, but they neglected the truth. His silence intended direction. Ford used to be no longer fascinated in convincing. He was once fascinated in creating. He had no time for debating. He used to be too targeted on building. He did no longer declare intention. He delivered it. He hardly ever defined himself. And when requested why, he said, thinking is the hardest work there is. Most guys keep away from silence due to the fact they do now not understand how to think. Ford welcomed it due to the fact that silence is imaginative and prescient grew to be vivid. He understood what you are now learning. Speech is a public act of belief. If you proceed to communicate weakness, even injustice, your trust in electricity will in no way grow. But if you give up talking, you will commence hearing. Not the voice of doubt, now not the noise of emotion, however the proper ideas that govern your actions. And as soon as you hear them, you can change them. You can't rewire what you refuse to observe. And observation requires silence. During these 30 days, you will commence to word how regularly your hysteric self desires to speak. And you will seize him at the area of your mouth. That is the second of liberation. No longer in the speech, however, in the withholding. You will see how many of your phrases had been defense. You will see how regularly you defined to attain sympathy. You will see how regularly you narrated your weak spot as if it had been phase of your identity. And in silence, you will sense that identification fall apart. That is now not death. That is rebirth. Now I provide you a drill, an easy regulation to look at with vigilance. Catch yourself earlier than each and every word. Ask, does this construct me or bind me? If it builds, it might also be spoken. If it binds, you will stay silent. Do no longer justify it. Do now not give an explanation for it. Let it pass. Let it die unspoken. This single moment, this pause will be the opening of 1,000 new ideas that in no way may want to have entered a thinking polluted with uncontrolled speech. And now I supply you a declaration. Speak it aloud. Speak it like you suggested. Not for show, however, for structure. I have no phrases for weakness. I construct in silence. I obey internal command. Again, I have no phrases for weakness. I construct in silence. I obey internal command. This is your identification now, not due to the fact you hope it is, however, due to the fact you will enforce it with discipline. You are now not right here to describe your limits. You are right here to exchange them. And the first device in that alternative is silence. Your intentions have now not failed you. Your inconsistency has. The man who intends to upward shove but speaks in contradiction to that purpose is a man divided towards himself. And no divided thought can produce greatness. If your unconscious receives one command in the morning and every other at midday, it obeys neither. It returns to drift. Because the unconscious does now not reply to inspiration. It responds to repetition. Understand this regulation, and you will recognize why most guys fail earlier than they begin. The unconscious thought does now not observe what you mean. It follows what you repeat. It does now not reward ambition. It rewards discipline. It does not apprehend emotion. It acknowledges consistency backed by means of belief. You may also intend to end up rich, strong, focused, or calm. But if your phrases contradict that aim, in particular your repeated, emotional, careless words, then your intention is overruled through your instruction. And what is instruction? It is the repeated language of identification spoken aloud, emotionally bolstered and allowed to play unchallenged throughout the mind. This is the regulation of auto-advice, and it governs each effect you create. Auto-suggestion is now not a spiritual novelty. It is the programming gadget by means of which all intellectual habits are fashioned and habit structure results. This regulation is usually active, whether you recognize it or not, whether or not you like it or not. You are constantly instructing your subconscious. The solely query is, what are you announcing to it? You can also communicate fine affirmations for 2 minutes every morning. But if you complain, react, gossip, vent, or narrate weak point for the closing 16 hours, then your unconscious is receiving the actual command. Stay small. Stay distracted. This is why silence for 30 days is now not simply a practice. It is a shock to the cycle. It is the compelled stillness that halts the leak. It is the first circumstance quintessential for reinstallation. You can't deploy a new trust till the historical language is removed. You can't plant new concept in floor nevertheless seeded with contradiction. Every careless sentence you've got ever spoken, each and every second of I do not know. I'm no longer ready. That's simply how I am has been written into the fibers of your self-image. The vow of silence is a spiritual fast, a purging of speech that no longer serves the man you are becoming. And as soon as the thinking has been cleared of noise, as soon as your tongue is no longer an untrained instrument, then and solely then can also you start again. However, this time with precision. Let me give you the structure. You will in silence start to write a new collection of declarations. You will no longer talk them aloud till the 30 days are complete. You will now not show them to others. You will no longer deal with them as motivational phrases. They are not for comfort. They are now not for emotional relief. They are for command. You are writing new orders to the thought, and consequently, they ought to be crafted in the shape of certainty. The method is this. I am. This is identity. You talk as the man you already are becoming. I do. This is action. You verify behavior. I build. This is purpose. You set up direction. I demand. This is will. You coach your unconscious that there is no turning back. Let me supply you examples. Not for mimicry, however, for instruction. I am a man of action. I do not wait. I do now not explain. I move. I do the work others avoid. I do what ought to be completed besides complaint. I construct order, power, wealth, and peace through everyday discipline. I demand readability from my ideas and shape from my hours. You will write 5 of these, no longer more. Now not less. You will write them as law. And for the ultimate days of the vow, you will examine them silently every morning. Not aloud, now not yet. because your mouth has no longer but been educated to talk solely what serves. In the silence, these declarations will take root. And by using the stop of 30 days, your voice will be easy again. And when it is clean, you will communicate these strains aloud. And when you do, your unconscious will accept as true with you, no longer due to the fact it was once inspired, however, due to the fact it was once prepared. Let me provide a photograph to deepen your understanding. Thomas Edison, recognized for his relentless experimentation, did now not waste words. He used to be now not a man of public declaration. He did now not attend preachers to communicate of what he had no longer but built. He did not lecture on the double of his inventions. He spoke to himself on my own in his lab. He spoke to his friends with readability and brevity. And when he failed, he stated nothing to the crowd. He again to the desk and resumed the work. He spoke solely what constructed the subsequent test, no longer what thrilled the ears of doubters. His speech used to be by no means for approval. It was once for action. And the unconscious of that man obeyed him due to the fact he in no way allowed contradiction. You have to now grow to be like Edison. You should talk solely what aligns with your shape, and that starts off evolved no longer in phrases, however, in withdrawal from them. Every man who rises needs to bear interior reformation, and reformation starts off evolved with stillness. You can't command a battlefield while surrounded by way of shouting. And you can't command your idea whilst your very own voice disobeys itself. You may additionally suppose that silence is weakness. But it is solely weak spot for these who worry themselves. For the man who is constructing structure, silence is sacred ground. Let me now communicate to your intuition to fill the space. You will feel the urge to communicate earlier than your thought is ready. You will sense the want to explain, to soften, to launch strain with informal words. Deny this urge. Let it die. Sift the pressure. It is now not punishment. It is purification. Your feelings may additionally rise. Your ideas may also rebel. Let them. Watch them. Say nothing. The heart is cleansing you. The silence is reshaping you. Your tongue is being retrained by means of restraint. And from this silence will emerge no longer a softer man, however a clearer one. A man whose voice no longer repeats the noise of the crowd, however publicizes the practice of a sovereign spirit. And now your drill. Write 5 declarations, the use of the formula. I am, I do, I build, I demand. Read them every morning in silence. After reading, mirror on how your moves that day will mirror every line. On day 31, talk them aloud 10 instances, every with power, breath, and certainty. And now your affirmation. I educate my thinking by way of maintaining my tongue. I communicate solely to command. Say it as soon as and let it ring in or you. Say it till your voice returns to you as an ally, no longer a saboteur. You are no longer what you say you are. You are what you say repeatedly. And what you say repeatedly, your unconscious obeys except question. So silence is now not the end. It is the first situation for a new beginning. The idea does no longer tire from labor. It tires from noise. It is now not the extent of work that burns you out. It is the extent of notion you by no means control. It is the emotional phrases you in no way restrain. It is the talking, explaining, reacting, expressing, responding. None of which ever constructed something of value, however, every of which depleted your electricity like water spilling from a cracked vessel. If you sense scattered, it is due to the fact you are unfold too skinny through speech. If you experience tired, it is due to the fact you are overdrawn by means of pointless explanation, now not significant effort. The common man leaks greater power via careless dialogue than he does via difficult labor. Speech, like thought, is currency. It feeds energy. Every phrase is a decision. Every choice is a withdrawal from the vault of willpower. If your phrases are many, your idea will be weak. If your choices are constant, your center of attention will be diffused. And if your focal point is diffused, your future will continue to be out of reach. Silence is conservation. Silence is storage. Silence is non-secular concentration. When you withdraw from speech, you do no longer turn out to be passive. You turn out to be potent. You collect your force. You reclaim your clarity. You start to sense the return of a lengthy misplaced strength. The energy that belongs solely to the man who no longer desires to be heard. That man is rare, but that man modifications each and every room he walks into. Let me educate you something few guys will ever understand. A man who speaks little, however, acts with precision, has extra effect than 1,000 guys with easy tongues and no censor. A man who sits nevertheless and says nothing, however, radiates decisiveness. Calm and self-respect is felt via others earlier than he opens his mouth. He instructions no longer due to the fact. He needs, however, due to the fact he incorporates his strength rather of spending it. Presence is what is left when useless speech has been removed. When you stroll into a room and say nothing, however, your eyes are clear, your posture clean, your steps unhurried, humans notice. Now not due to the fact you perform, however, due to the fact you preserved. You raise strength that has now not been depleted with the aid of talking. You raise selections already made in silence. You do now not chase attention. You anchor the house by way of occupying it. Silence will increase gravity. Most guys have an effect on through making noise. They misunderstand the law. The extra they talk, the greater they combo in. The louder they get, the less they are heard. Because attention follows no longer sound. It follows power. And energy is no longer displayed. It is felt. Let me supply you the law. He who is silent will become visible. He who is loud will become forgettable. The invisible man is the one who tries too challenging to be seen. The unforgettable man is the one who does no longer chase interest, however, arrives with reason and wishes no permission to remain. The biggest amongst guys have usually understood this. Abraham Lincoln, whose readability reshaped the nation, was once no longer recognized for dominating rooms with talk. He sat quietly, regularly, for lengthy stretches whilst others debated. His silence made others uncomfortable. However, it made him immovable. He allowed confusion to unravel whilst he sharpened his very own thoughts in stillness. When he did speak, it was once with finality, no longer due to the fact his speech was once eloquent, however, due to the fact it used to be backed by means of readability bought in silence. His presence stated greater than his phrases ever wanted to. That is your new model for the subsequent 30 days and for the relaxation of your existence if you are wise. You will start working towards presence without speech, now not as an act, no longer as a posture, however, as a way of being. You will let others communicate freely. You will listen, no longer to respond, however, to learn. You will be aware how regularly you, as soon as stuff the air with phrases, and how useless it usually was. You will permit the silence to work on you to expose the components of your identification that solely existed when you have been speaking. You will experience uncomfortable at first. That soreness is the warmth of transformation. Do now not run from it. Sit in it and grow. Your presence will begin to change. You will cross greater slowly. You will end desiring to say what you think. You will understand what you assume besides desiring to broadcast it. You will find out that human beings pay attention greater cautiously when you talk less. You will be requested for your enter greater frequently when you withhold it greater accurately due to the fact silence is magnetic. And when your power is no longer leaking through informal words, it starts off evolved to shape a pressure around you that no one can ignore, even if you say nothing at all. Now I provide you a new drill. Each day at some stage in this vow, exercise getting into areas with presence, now not words. You may additionally stroll into your office, your home, a conversation, a meal, or a decision-making moment. But you will no longer lead with your mouth. You will lead with your composure, with your attention, with the electricity you have stored within. Sit, listen, watch, reply solely if necessary. And if you need to speak, communicate solely what builds. This single dependency will rewire your anxious system. You will quit reacting. You will commence perceiving. You will cease performing. You will start deciding. You will cease burning electricity and start conserving it for forceful, innovative direction. And now say this aloud, now not loudly, ever clearly, slowly, like a man who capacity it. My silence speaks. My stillness builds. My presence precedes me. Say it again. My silence speaks. My stillness builds. My presence precedes me. This is no longer basically an affirmation. It is a command to the mind. It is a rewiring of the very rhythm by means of which you enter your days. You are no longer right here to be loud. You are here to come to be undeniable. And that variety of man speaks less, no longer due to the fact he cannot, however due to the fact he has no want to. The man who explains too a whole lot acts too little. That is the fact most can't undergo to hear. They trust that if they describe their intentions regularly enough, they will grow to be real. But in truth, each clarification is a leak. Every time you supply voice to what is no longer but finished, you fracture its force. You break up the modern of your personal will. You talk rather of build. You describe instead of decide. Most guys sabotage their development with the aid of asserting their purpose too early, too often, and to too many. They favor to be viewed starting. They desire credit score earlier than completion. They favor help for imaginative and prescient now, not but born. But greatness does now not want announcement. It desires obedience to movement. Let me supply you the law. Build first, talk last. The most effective plans are now not published in words. They are published in results. Until these consequences are made seen through action, the graph have to remain protected by means of silence. Silence is no longer the absence of strategy. It is the womb of action. It is the place thoughts gestate into conviction. It is the place goals develop legs. It is the place identification takes form in the fireplace of repetition, now not the applause of conversation. You do now not owe the world your explanation. You owe your future your execution. Let me remind you of a man who mastered this law. Andrew Carnegie was once now not recognized for discussion. He used to be acknowledged for declaration. He did no longer speculate. He determined his speech used to be not an act of exploration. It used to be an act of enforcement. When he spoke, the selection had already been made. His phrases had been final. He gave no disclaimers. He did now not surprise aloud. He did no longer want validation. He had moved lengthy earlier than the sentence left his mouth. And that is the variety of man you are becoming. From this day forward, your speech will no longer be the area the place thoughts are formed. That manner belongs in your silence. Your phrases are no longer the area for private therapy. That belongs in your journal, in your discipline, in your stillness. You will no longer discuss about what you are going to do. You will do it. And if requested about it, you will say nothing. Not out of secrecy, however, out of sovereignty, because you have nothing to prove, solely something to complete. Here is your challenge. Simple in theory, effective in execution. Take one important goal, one that thinks to you, and for the subsequent 30 days, communicate of it to no one. Not your friends, not your family, now not your circle, no longer even in passing. You will now not announce it. You will no longer provide an explanation for it. You will now not are searching for feedback. You will solely act. You may also experience the strain to say something. You may additionally sense the pain of withholding. Let me be clear. That strain is your weak spot leaving. That strain is the historic model of you gasping for air. Starve it. The ancient model of you desired to be heard. The new model of you desires to get it done. There will be moments in these 30 days, the place you will have something to say. Perhaps a win, a milestone, a step taken. You will feel the urge to share it, let it die. You are now not right here to perform. You are right here to produce. The vow of silence is no longer solely about your voice. It is about your motives. If you want to communicate in order to sense like something is happening, then you do now not but accept as true within the energy of personal action. But this vow will write that. It will educate you to derive delight now not from acknowledgement, however, from movement. You will discover after a few days of withheld speech that your motion will become cleaner, sharper due to the fact you no longer waste energy narrating. You do no longer pause to inform the world. You virtually proceed and that momentum compounds. Let me supply you this truth. The greater you provide an explanation for yourself, the much less they trust you. But the greater you cross besides commentary, the extra simple you become. The man who desires to discuss about what he is doing lacks belief. The man who does no longer communicate at all, however, offers what he has declared silently to himself, is a man no one can stop. So I provide your new structure. Choose your goal. Write it privately. Keep it sacred. Each day pass on it bearing telling. Let the urge to communicate bypass via you. Let it die. Let your new strength be viewed in your progress. Now not your posts, and now your affirmation. Speak at once, slowly with your head high, your shoulders back, your coronary heart steady. My moves communicate of destiny. My voice is reserved for command. Again, my movements talk of destiny. My voice is reserved for command. From this factor forward, you are no longer a man of verbal planning. You are a man of silent completion. And when the work is done, the world will ask how you did it. You will say nothing. You will smile due to the fact your existence will have already spoken on your behalf. The motive of silence is no longer to provoke the world. It is to meet yourself. It is now not to obtain applause, show up composed, or play the position of discipline. That is surface. The actual fee of silence lies in what it unveils. Beneath the noise, below the excuses, below the emotion, under the well-rehearsed masks you've got worn for years. I am now not asking you to stop the talking for the world's sake. I am commanding you to quit speaking so you can hear the voice that has been ready interior you, your different self. There are two of you. There is the self that reacts, speaks quickly, hesitates underneath pressure, desires to be understood, seeks remedy in distraction, and drowns in opinions. That self is public practice and temporary. That self is a product of exterior impact formed by using what others have stated and what the world has demanded. But then there is another self, a self you did now not invent, however should uncover, a self that speaks with clarity, sees with force, strikes besides approval, and makes selections from a vicinity so deep and unshakable it feels like fireplace wrapped in stillness. That self does no longer talk often. However, when it does, it speaks with finality. And it does now not arrive via effort. It arrives via stillness. In Think and Grow Rich, I describe this come upon in no unsure terms. It was once now not imagination. It was once no longer fantasy. It used to be a voice internal, clear, unshakable, that gave me path when the world provided solely confusion. It gave me education when common sense failed. It emerged after hours of sitting, writing, thinking, and now not speaking. It was once in silence that I met the different self. And I inform you now, it was once that voice that constructed everything, not the outer one, no longer the practiced one, now not the one skilled by using society, however the internal self, the one cast with the aid of faith, guided by using deafness, and wakened solely when the noise is removed. You have this same self. It lives inside you now. It is no longer gone. It is now not dormant. It is in basic terms buried below layers of intellectual debris, everyday distractions, and most of all, your personal needless speech. Every sentence you have spoken out of compulsion, each reaction, each and every explanation, each burst of commentary, it has all fashioned a wall around this deeper self. A wall so thick that most guys in no way hear the voice again. But if you would be different, if you would upward shove whilst others repeat, you should now hear with the deepest type of attention. And that interest can't exist whilst the tongue is busy. 30 days of silence is no longer a performance. It is a reckoning, an elimination of the mask, a return to source. And if you remain with it, if you sit down in the discomfort, the boredom, the pull to speak, then something starts off evolved to shift. A voice starts off evolved to emerge. And it is no longer soft. It is no longer uncertain. It is now not passive. It says matters like. You have been no longer made to drift. You have been now not born to explain. You have been constructed for direction, for order, for destiny. It reminds you of your exact chief purpose, not the one you say aloud to sound focused, however the one buried in your bones. The one you knew earlier than the world talked you out of it. The one that nevertheless calls you back, no longer with noise, however with clarity. But you can't hear this voice till the lesser voice dies. That is the secret no one teaches, that the best section of you can't upward thrust till the loudest section of you is silenced. That strength belongs to the man who can sit down nevertheless lengthy adequate to hear instruction from within. Let me supply you the principle. Stillness is now not the absence of thought. It is the return of the genuine thought. When you give up reacting to the whole thing outside, you start listening to what is genuine inside. When you cease describing your frustrations, you begin figuring out your aim. When you give up speaking, the interior compass starts to rotate again. That compass is real. It will exhibit you the place to go. It will write your course, however solely in silence. Only when you've got stopped proving, only when you've got stopped narrating weakness. And now I provide you a command, no longer a suggestion. Each day for the duration of this vow, spend 15 minutes in absolute stillness. No talking, no planning, no reacting, simply listening, simply writing, simply remembering who you have been earlier than you forgot. Ask yourself silently, what am I right here to build? What idea should I replace? What does the man I am turning into accept as true that I have no longer but said? Then write. You will now not share it. You will now not talk about it. You will write as a ritual. You will let the different self start to speak. Now not with the paragraphs, however with orders. Now not with emotion, however with clarity, and you will follow. This is the place the vow leads, no longer to much less life, however to new life. Now not to coldness, however to command. Not to silence for silence's sake, however to voice that adjustments the future when it eventually speaks again. And now I supply you your affirmation. Say it like a man who is listening for the first time. I do now not concern silence. I locate myself in it again. I do not concern silence. I discover myself in it, because when this vow is complete, when the noise is long gone and the distractions are dead, you will comprehend who you are again. And when you communicate again, it will now not be for reaction. It will be for direction. You may also assume that your silence will go unnoticed. You may also worry that by means of pronouncing nothing, you will emerge as invisible. But hear carefully. The world does no longer observe noise. It follows weight, and weight does now not require volume. It requires gravity. It requires inside command. It requires stillness enforced through intention. True presence needs no explanation. It does now not beg for attention. It does now not demand recognition. It is now not loud. It is now not flamboyant, but it is unmistakable, and it usually receives observed no longer due to the fact it broadcasts itself, however, due to the fact it stands aside from the guys who in no way cease talking. In these 30 days, if you observe this vow no longer as ritual, however, as identity, you will commence to sense the shift. Your phrases will grow to be fewer. Your ideas will emerge as sharper. Your choices will elevate finality. And the human beings around you will commence to sense something they cannot explain. They will say something changed. They will say he is different. They will now not comprehend what it is due to the fact you will no longer inform them. But your silence will start to construct a lifestyle that speaks barring words. You need to recognize the law. He who masters silence builds the existence that speaks except words. Most guys construct a personality. They collect a costume of phrase of mannerisms, opinions, and noise. They exchange that costume based totally on the room. They talk to be liked. They specific to be seen. But the man who walks in silence builds authority. He no longer seeks to be liked. He seeks to grow to be undeniable. He does now not put on a costume. He wears discipline. Let me remind you of the guys whose names you nonetheless remember. Not due to the fact they spoke often, however, due to the fact they moved with certainty. Henry Ford used to be no longer cherished for his charisma. He was once revered for his clarity. He refused to give an explanation for his thoughts when he had already decided. He let the world mock, and he delivered results. John D. Rockefeller spoke much less than any man in the room. Yet every man in the room watched him. When he in the end spoke, the dialogue shifted, no longer due to the fact he raised his voice, however, due to the fact he by no means wasted it. Abraham Lincoln would sit down through whole conferences except uttering a word, letting the fever of others burn out in noise whilst he sharpened his response in silence. And when he spoke, it was once over. His presence got here no longer from his position, however, from his composure. These guys constructed lives that commanded attention, no longer through performance, however, through consistency, restraint, and direction. And you will do the same. Do now not suppose for a second that silence will make you weaker. It will make you sharper. It will no longer dim your influence. It will listen it. You will give up chasing cognites and comments drawing it. Not through manipulation, however, via the quiet pressure of turning into a man who wants no approval to move. You are now not right here to construct a personality. You are right here to construct presence. You are now not right here to be charming. You are right here to be consequential. Now, I provide you a command that may additionally test your instinct. Do now not announce your 30-day vow of silence to others. Do now not broadcast it. Do no longer ask for understanding. Do no longer give an explanation for why you are speaking me less. Say nothing about it. Just end up it. Let your silence talk louder than any statement could. If asked, you may also smile. You may also nod. You may additionally provide a short answer, but you will now not flip your self-discipline into a show. You are no longer performing. You are practicing. You are no longer documenting a shift. You are embodying one. Let your household sense it. Let your circle sense it. Let your friends watch it. And let your actions, extra deliberate, extra focused, extra final, inform them the whole lot they want to know. Because after 30 days of silence, your voice will now not solely sound different, it will imply different. Your language will no longer be noise. It will be signal. Every sentence will elevate the pressure of a man who has sat with himself and obeyed his very own law. You will no longer communicate to fill air. You will talk solely to command it. And now say this aloud, calm, measured and absolute. I am constructing a life that speaks when I say nothing. Again, I am constructing a lifestyle that speaks when I say nothing. Because your silence is no longer a pause. It is a message. And the world will hear even if you by no means say a word. This vow you have taken, this 30-day silence is no longer a phase. It is now not a mission for transient restraint. It is no longer a non-secular test or a check of endurance. This vow is the opening of a condition, new posture, a new code via which you will now behavior your life. Because a man who masters his speech masters his future. And that mastery does now not cease with a clock. It starts off evolved with identity. From this factor forward, speech is no longer something you fall into. It is something you choose. It is no longer something that leaks from you in moments of soreness or starvation for attention. It is something that is measured, deliberate, and reserved for force, for instruction, for precision. Speech is now a weapon, and like all weapons, it should be holstered extra regularly than drawn. It should be cleaned, sharpened, respected. It must not be used for display, however, for direction. You are no longer right here to describe your mood. You are now right here to narrate your doubt. You are now not right here to launch strain through verbal escape. You are right here to form your world, and your phrases are now your tools, no longer your trap. Let us assessment what you have learned, what you have become. You now communicate solely what builds. If it does now not add shape to your thoughts, to your action, to your aim, it is no longer spoken. You communicate solely what instructs. If it does now not direct yourself or every other towards movement, it is withheld. You communicate solely what declares. No extra hints. No greater emotion disguised as fact. You say what you suggest and you act at the back of it. You talk solely when it is time to go others, by no means to stabilize your personal insecurity. Your mouth is no longer a vicinity for emotional leakage. It is a location of leadership. This is the shape of the man you have now become, and it is a shape that does now not dissolve with the passing of 30 days. It is a way of life. You are not returning to the man you were. He was once dominated by way of noise. You are now dominated by using internal law. He lived in reaction. You now stay in deliberate construction. Let your speech re-enter your existence like a man returning from battle. Calm, sharpened and understanding its personal strength. You are no longer careless. You are no longer compulsive. You are no longer triggered. You are now a man who speaks solely when the weight of the second requires pressure and solely when the fireplace has already been solid in silence. I now provide your ultimate command, a ritual that will separate you from the majority of guys whose voices are loud, however, whose lives are soft. On day 31, you will study your 5 affirmations aloud, 10 instances each, with posture, with breath, with power. You will no longer whisper them. You will now not mutter them like wishes. You will communicate them as declarations from a man who no longer approves the tongue to outrun the mind. You will seem to be it yourself in the replicate, and you will speak, I am the man you have chosen to become. I do the movements that form your day. I construct the life that can't be shaken. I demand the inner obedience that creates exterior order. And these 5 statements will now not be for motivation. They will be structure. They will be orders. They will be the basis of your new speech. Brief, clear, commanding. And from that day forward, you will talk solely to strengthen these pillars. Now, not to get away discomfort, no longer to show yourself, no longer to describe self. You will talk solely truth, aim, identity, and instruction. And now say this closing affirmation aloud. Stand as you do, and speak it now not from the throat, however from the diaphragm, from the area interior you that has been silent till now, ready to return. I am a man of command. I maintain my words. I launch solely power. I am silent till it is time to build. Again, slower, sharper, with finality. I am a man of command. I keep my words. I launch solely power. I am silent till it is time to build. Let that sentence mark the closing of the historic you. Let it burn in your memory. Let it information your mouth from this day forward. You are no longer a man who leaks identity. You are a man who builds it in silence and when vital in command. The vow is complete. However, the self-discipline has simply begun.